am here.
No,
What is up? What is up? How's everybody
I
doing?
just fucked that up so bad.
How is everybody doing? We got hacks in the morning. We're having some technical difficulties. We're having a good time. Hope you're having a good time. We have some special guests here, some experts, not only in crypto, but also in PowerCity. We were talking about PowerCity yesterday, and I deep dove into their white paper and read it through twice. So we brought them on to actually go to the source of the information. If I have questions, I want to go to the guys that actually know what the fuck's going on. So that's who we have today. That's what we're going to talk about in just a moment. But first, let's get into this video.
Young folks, you tripping on them motherfucker.
Richard Heart. Richard Heart.
Bought my hex from the fucking start. Point one every day we mark. Bought my hex from the fucking start. Sacrificing all this bread like I'm Richard Heart. Got paid on big payday and I had a hair restart. Now I'm checking on my pulse just to check my heart. Bought my hex from the fucking start. Sacrificing all this bread like I'm Richard Heart. Got paid on big payday and I had a hair restart. Now I'm checking on my pulse just to check my heart. Checking my MetaMask moving. Look at the hex, he is moving. Looking at why they be choosing. Peter is why they be losing. Pull chains out and they'll get me a check. He's gas up and it got me a mess. Remember the times he died collect. Hex I been eating, I'm dying in the best. Getting this back like a year ago. Getting this post, I ain't letting go. Swerving the ring like a Lambo. Getting this back like a year ago. Getting this post, I ain't letting go. Swerving the ring like a Lambo. Bought my hex from the fucking start. Sacrificing all this bread like I'm Richard Heart. Got paid on big payday and I had a hair restart. Now I'm checking on my pulse just to check my heart. Bought my hex from the fucking start. Sacrificing all this bread like
What's up, fam? It's your
What
boy,
is-
GRC and Sam Stoll. How you
Good
doing?
morning. I'm doing awesome. I'm really looking forward to this because I like to get into the nitty gritty and I like to look to understand what's going on. And what better way to do that than talk to the people who know the intimate details of what is going on. So I'm excited because we have two awesome people coming on, Toshi and I forget the other guy's name, but
The
he has a
long
longer,
vacation.
the long vacation. So this is
Long
going to be
vacation.
good. This is going to be. Why don't we say hi to some of the people in the chat? I'll let you run through.
I had
those.
a wild morning, guys. I'm a little, not that I didn't do my prep for the show, but I just was running late because I have no vehicle and some dude smashed into my vehicle and ran away. And now my insurance is absolutely ruining my life. And I honestly cannot deal. Like, it's so hard to deal with these insurance companies in this country. It is one of the most disgusting things I've ever witnessed as an adult who's now living alone with one vehicle. The insurance companies would, if I was dying on the ground in front of them, they would not care. So that's been stressing me out. But we're here. We're going from the bottom up, guys. We want to know what's going on. White paper. What is their project based on? What are we trying to do as far as pulse chain? How does this all relate? This is kind of, we're just, for everyone here who's new, I'm going to try my best to have Sam dumb this down a little bit. It's not going to be dumbed down too much, because this is all complicated stuff to some person who doesn't know anything about crypto. They're not going to know what we're talking about. But for the guys that kind of know, let's try and get towards them a little bit, because sometimes those smarter guys already made their decision in their head, but there's guys that literally want to learn there. So let's talk to those guys right now.
Yes,
guys, we got Toshi. We got the long vacation. How's everyone doing this morning?
Great. Good morning.
Good morning.
How you guys? Thanks for coming on. So can you guys tell us a little bit like about your background, just like a minute kind of like elevator pitch to give me some context, but also because you guys have a live sacrifice going on right now, right? So
yes, we do.
It's got, there's still opportunity to get in, but this is the time where people can learn more about you, So go ahead, Toshi, you want to start?
Sure. So I got into crypto about 2015. With a friend of mine, DJ Lethal from Limp Bizkit House of Pain, called me up one day and said, "You need to get into this Bitcoin and Ethereum thing." And I was like, "What are you talking about?" And So I did a bunch of research, and I'm like, I'm in. Let's do it. So I started investing into Bitcoin and Ethereum, and we had a nice run up. And I thought that's how all crypto was going to be. And boy, was I wrong. So,
why do you say that? Like, why were you wrong? Why do you say that? What did you see to like say, hey, it's not like always like this?
I tried other stuff that just was wrecked and got wrecked, thinking that like, oh, okay, I could just put my money in. I just tried a bunch of different crypto, and it was like, no, it was just all trash.
Okay.
And then did some trading back and forth, found Hex, and I was like, oh my God, this is legit. And at first, when I first discovered it, I thought, oh God, this guy's a scammer. Like, he's showing his face, and I'm like, there was all this horrible Google, like, just like, I Googled him, and it was just like terrible. But I never trust all, just that. So I dove in more and watched some of his live streams, and I was like, I love this guy. I just thought I just liked how he just felt real. And I could tell that there was people that didn't like him because he was being so truthful. And I'm like, dude, I like this guy. I don't care what people are saying. And then I'm like, that's why I feel like they're saying that. It's just, they're trying to combat his, like, how real he's being. And that got me into Hex. And then obviously in doing that, I knew Pulse Chain was launching from Richard Hart. And I was like, oh, wow, look at this. It's a blockchain. I've never been able to participate in a blockchain before it goes live. I thought it was like the most insane thing ever, and I've never had that opportunity. So I'm like, yeah, I'm all in on this. So, I was part of a sacrifice group that helped this group called the Vault. We helped bring onboard people into Pulse Chain Sacrifice, just friends and family, and just a big group of guys and gals. And we put together a sacrifice group, and we did that. And it was awesome. A great experience. Really got to meet some awesome people. Long vacation in the process of that, and the rest of our team. And we formed basically a side group, and just filled with a lot of excitement and ideas and how we'd like to see the chain grow and be successful. Because this is a golden opportunity. I don't know if we'll have another chance to participate like this. It's incredible. And the whole sacrifice thing was, I thought, brilliant.
Right? Like, such a novel way of putting things, like, the semantics of how things are presented are so important to, like, especially from a legal standpoint, and the semantics of how a sacrifice is set up is like beautiful. Like, you know what I mean? I love the details around that. So that's awesome. I appreciate you sharing some of the
yeah. And it was amazing. So we had this side group that we kind of started, just a really smart guys that really were like-minded with the direction I was thinking, and they were thinking the same way. And it was because in the beginning I was just listening to like Pulse Chain, Calm on Telegram, and it was just chaos, traffic, people like talking over people, poor Papa Bona having to calm people down, and like one at a time, it was just chaos kind of in there for a while. So
yeah, what was that? So I've been in.
So yeah, let me give you context on that, because I can give context on that, because I don't use Telegram for those two chats in particular, because I literally cannot read that fast. I just can't. I don't know how to read that fast, nor do I care to sit there and read that fast.
Yeah,
it's just like, oh, guys, can I have a question? Yeah, you're gonna get a link, but it's gonna be like 100 people plus a little spam plus we gotta get this guy out of here. In my opinion, those large Telegram groups are dead. Like, you can't do anything in them. You can use them as a resource and make sure you're in there and like big links and everything. But there's talk spaces in Twitter you can go in and just ask any question you want.
Yeah,
and they'll bring you right to the front, and they'll say, "Hey, you have a question? We'll answer it." So, guys, just make sure as we move on technologically, there's also the way we communicate changes too. Like, I get information a lot different ways than the normal guy gets information, because there's so much value in the Hex community. It's disgusting. But the Telegram to me is like, maybe I'm just undereducated, but
it's like education overload. They're trying to answer questions for people. Yeah. Plus they're trying to like make sure that they're not wrecking themselves by getting scammed, and making sure they have the right type of wallet. So it's awesome. It's great. And those guys are it's amazing the admins in there that are just working.
It's a challenge to moderate, that's for sure.
That's what I assume.
It's not easy.
Yeah, long vacation's one of them. I mean, it's insane.
Long vacation. You're moderator admin in Pulse X or Pulse Chain Telegram or something?
Pulse X, Pulse Chain Com, the Hex Streams, CryptoGov. There's also the altcoin room, PRC, Pulse Chain altcoins. And then, of course, our groups we have for PowerCity. So, yeah, definitely working a lot with the community. Wow. Yeah, and we worked very early on to try to bring everyone together, try to make sure that good information, quality information was being disseminated, not misinformation, answering lots of questions, helping people through the initial sacrifice for Pulse Chain and then on to Pulse X and so on. So that team of people, they're all volunteers. No one's compensated. They do a lot of work, and it's just a labor of love. Yeah, they give back to the community because they just want the community to be able to do well, and they try to moderate that. So a lot of value add from everyone.
Getting some love. I'm sorry to interrupt. Getting some love in the comments from Jenny from the block.
You're getting a lot of love. You're getting a lot of love in the comments for all you do in the Hex community. For Sam, for what you don't know, kind of like a measure, not a measure, but like what people like to do is like, as far as how long you've been a Hexican, like how much work have you put in to help other people? Because at the end of the day, we've all been given a great opportunity here. And I think every Hexican deep down, not as their primary job, but just would like to give back when they can. Some guys give back a little more than others. Some people are a little more fortunate than others, whatever. But giving back is a great metric when you're looking at, just like we say, we want the founders to be non-anonymous, right? That's like one check mark. The next check mark is like, were they around? Were they in the trenches? Like, were they dodging freaking assholes for a year straight that were saying Richard's a furu for no reason?
This, that, the other thing.
Yeah, for no reason. Yes, they were. It's clear that they were. In the comments, I don't even have to ask because the comments clear that up for me plenty.
Can you give us a little bit of background about yourself too? Like how Toshi was just like, how did you get into this? Like it's been on the peripheral for me for years, like crypto, but it's never been like focus of mine.
Sure.
But like, how did you get into crypto and stuff like that? And you said I'm apologize. So you said you don't get compensated, but I think we do in a way by helping the community, because I'm assuming you and Toshi are friends. That's a way of compensation. I'm not getting compensated, but I'm spending more time with GRC. I'm meeting awesome people. Like I'm talking to people on the phone that I've never had relationships for. Those relationships are like beautiful things that can blossom into a business relationship or an opportunity to provide even greater amounts of value. In the immediacy, there's no like money going to the account, but in the macro like fulfillment of life, we bring in these awesome people who are like-minded, who want to help people. So I think like we just need to distinguish that, because I don't think people talk about it, right? It's like, yeah, you're not getting money, but like you meet some really awesome people that can become friends and business partners or whatever the case is. So sorry about that. Go ahead. Tell us about yourself.
No, and that's why I call it a labor of love, because the admins, they're there because they want to help the community. They want to give back to the community. They want to see people be safe and not get scammed. They want them to have good information, to be able to make good decisions, right? And to learn and to be able to spread that information and pass it on, right? So, I mean, definitely there's compensation in that sense, but, just trying to clear the air as far as, this is not a group of paid shillers, right? This is a group of people who love what they're doing enough to be able to spend 12 hours a day answering questions all day in Telegram, right? Just for fun, quote unquote.
100%.
So my background is in traditional finance. I worked for 25 years in private banking and trust companies doing software design, development, and business strategy. So I came from that area into crypto about 2 years ago, and learned, started with Bitcoin and started to learn more and more, got involved in Hex right before Big Payday, and then really started deep diving into it from there, which is what helped, get me into the Hex community, and then learned about Pulse Chain, and then get really deep into Pulse Chain and what was going to happen, what all the early game theory was around like, how will liquidity be forked over, and how will the tokens and the forked contracts behave on Pulse Chain, and like all these detailed things, trying to figure out, okay, you're going to take a copy of everything, you're going to make it on a new chain that's faster, cheaper, better, right? Great, that's awesome. What does that mean, right? And the devil's in the details, and we were trying to dig into all those details as a group. We then were doing that in the vault. We were helping in post planning, trying to figure out like some of the details with Richard Hart. So, I mean, we've been very, down in the weeds for a long time. And when we started getting it, together to think of, well, what can we build on Pulse Chain? It started with one idea and blossomed into many ideas, into this entire ecosystem that we're trying to design right now. One of the challenges, right, and this is really what PowerCity is all about, is Pulse Chain will be a new chain. It will instantly have potentially millions of users on day one. The reality, though, is the vast majority of things that are forking over will not work. That's the reality of it. So if you want to go to Aave, if you want to go to something else, Compound or whatever, chances are it might not work because there's no oracles, there's no graph support, there's other key infrastructure pieces that are not part of that fork. Okay. So what are we going to do as a community? Are we going to sit back and we're going to wait for someone else to come fill in those gaps? Or are we going to stand up and go build what we need to build out this community? So we're focusing on bridges. We're focusing on nodes. We're focusing on driving, adoption of liquid loans to drive volume of transactions on Pulse Chain, right? How do you support Pulse Chain? You bring value in, right? So how do you get people new value onto chain, not just people who sacrifice, but new money onto chain? You need a bridge, right? And we're going to have one really good bridge to Ethereum. But we're strong believers that we need other routes on cheaper chains as well, so that those people who want to come in and not pay those Ethereum fees have a way to retain more of their capital when they come on chain. We're going to be
necessary, clearly necessary, right?
Correct.
Like, clearly necessary. It has to be done. You can't bridge to ETH and then over there. That just is stupid.
I had two questions on that, and then I want to if you have how they're like, oh, an elevator pitch? What's kind of the best essence of
After you go, we'll do elevator pitch. But right before they go, right before you go, let's just say hi to the chat real quick, guys. I'm trying to fucking focus. Okay, it's so hard to focus.
Why don't you say hi to the chat right now? What's up?
Say hi to the chat, guys. Please, if you have not, hit the like, hit the sub. I've been throwing around wrenches like it's my job today. Sandy B, how are you? Hexagrapher, Jetty from the block. How are you doing, Jenny from the block?
Jenny's awesome. Sandy's awesome. Some of these folks are great members of the community here. Fantastic.
Benny Blanco, my man. And then I think this guy might be from your side of the block because I haven't seen that square yet. And good to see you, Osirin. How are you doing? It's alive. LB and Toshi, biceps in the chat. For PowerCity.
Let's get a flex, yes. LB, let's get a flex on.
Yes. That's what we like here. I almost got Papa Boner to flex. He was like, he stopped. He was like, no, I'm not doing that crap. So I was like, damn it.
He has limits, huh?
Thank you so much. Please hit the sub and the like. I'm going to continue to let Sam and these guys go, and I'm going to continue to pay attention and take notes.
Okay, so 3 parts. First of all, go ahead with the elevator pitch, but I'm sure I have questions related to that. When we're talking about transformers, or you call it transformers, right, or bridges, right? Is that the idea it's synonymous, right? Is there a way to come from other chains over to Pulse, right, without touching Ethereum, or is that not possible? I honestly don't know. I'm brand new. I'm trying to learn this as I go, and you guys have way more experience than I do.
We'll break this down piece by piece. Not a problem. So first things first, what is PowerCity elevator pitch? Highest level is PowerCity is an ecosystem of multiple decentralized applications and services that will be launched on Pulse Chain that are all linked together by one central core. Okay, the core is the treasury that will drive all these applications and services, will provide people a single place to stake and participate in the growth of the entire ecosystem, right? And all these dApps were selected and picked to drive growth and adoption and value to both users and developers alike on Pulse Chain. So we have a series of applications that we've announced so far. There's the core treasury, which has the staking component. We'll dive into whatever pieces you want. The Transformer cross-chain swap, Pixel Park NFT marketplace, which will also have DeFi NFTs and boxable tiny home NFTs and other unique uses of that type of technology. The accelerator yield compounder, which among other things will be a custom front end to liquid loans to help automate some of the haunted strategies and other strategies that people have been designing around using liquid loans. And then there's the energy nodes as a service. We can explain why nodes are critical to the success of a blockchain, and then PowerCity Metaverse. Now, these are the things that we've announced. There are other things in the pipeline, and the goal is to build a series of applications that are just building out this ecosystem, filling in key services that are needed on the Pulse chain, right, to drive adoption, to bring new value on, right? And every one of those applications is designed to send their revenue back into the core. The core treasury then, as it grows, will then further fund staking rewards for people who are staking the Watt token. So you stake Watt, you participate in the growth of the entire ecosystem, right? So think of it as you're participating in all of these apps as they are launched by staking in one place. You don't have to go and acquire 5 different tokens and stake in 5 different contracts and so on.
Now, as far as what people backlash on you immediately, what are the things that, I mean, I just mean like the regurgitated backlash that you get more so than anything. There has to be there.
Well, I mean, you mentioned some of it earlier as far as, well, do we know you or not, or, learning about the project or not. Some people like sacrifices or not, right? And look, I mean, you're in marketing. You already know you're not going to make everybody happy, no matter how hard you try, right? And the best that we're trying to do is be stand up, honest, and really, put it out there. We want to see Pulse Chain succeed. And if we are doing this right, then our success will help drive Pulse Chain's success. And I'm not saying that just to say we have a big head and we think that much of ourselves.
That's the use case.
That's the use case.
For the community, it's just adoption, guys. It's just,
Correct.
At the end of the day, these are tools for adoption. There's lots of fancy mumbo jumbo, and there's money getting and all that stuff. But it's making somebody who is on AVAX or whatever chain that's going on, they can go straight to the Pulse chain without going to ETH first. And if you know anything about crypto and Ethereum, you know that it's an absolute mockery right now what's going on in Ethereum. It's a joke. I've never seen anything like it. It reminds me of the car insurance companies in the United States. So that's not a good sign, Vitalik. That is a bad sign. So,
that's near and dear to your heart right now, yes.
Exactly.
It's like a hit and run. It's like a hit and run.
It is a fucking hit.
Literally, what he went through 2 weeks ago. So in the middle of the night, somebody just ran into his car and destroyed totally his car.
I was really asleep.
Sorry to hear that, man.
I was asleep in my bed, and like some F-150 just like leveled my whip, and I was just like, "Yeah, insurance got it. Like you're good. Like it's all good to go." Insurance, like 2 weeks later, like just doing anything not to give me a check, anything. Anything, and I'm just like, at this point, I'm trying to do this, so I'm like, just do whatever. Like,
the insurance adjuster's like, "Are you sure it didn't look like this before?" I don't.
But what you guys were saying about the transparency, that's half of the game. This is a social world, and this is a social situation. Crypto has a lot of psychological dynamics involved within it. Everyone knows it that's been in the game. This is all about psychology at the end of the day, buying and selling crypto, why you do it and why you don't. These guys are putting their faces out there, and they're saying what they mean. And there's a 95% of the people in crypto wouldn't even start there, guys. So that takes 95% of it out.
Yes.
Out.
So when I completely agree. The transparency. Who is the guy? I think it's Chevy or something. The guy who is the CEO and founder of Airbnb, and his thing is all about trust. Like if we can increase the trust in the system, right? Because we've got hosts and we have people who are using it, and then there's investors. And by increasing the trust in the system, everybody goes through and wins. And that's how I think about transparency. When I went through and read your white paper, I have a background in finance and accounting. So to me, it sounds like, and correct me, this is just like, hey, I'm reading this is what it sounds like to me. It sounds like kind of like a angel / activist / fund in a sense. But is that kind of like an accurate or kind of like a little bit of a gist in how it's being, not necessarily in terms of compensation, right? Because we can talk about that in a minute. But just in terms of like, you know, how an activist fund only invests into certain projects, or is it the self-development of it, as in like, I'm an angel fund and I'm going to partner with you because I have all these things to offer to help you as the developers, project idea people who are putting this together grow. But I could be completely off base. That's just how I perceive that. Is that, can you talk to that? Either one, it doesn't matter.
There are a lot of similarities in concepts, though there are certain things that we cannot say. We are in a sacrifice. We are not a security. This is not a fund, right? So we do have to be very specific about language, and I do apologize for that. But the concept of being able to participate in all of these applications by staking in one place, right, gives you exposure to the success of all of them combined by participating in the core. Right. So by staking in the core, you then are sharing in the growth of the core, which is fueled by the core's investments. And the core is the one responsible for building and launching all these other applications. It owns those applications, technically, right? So it is earning money from all these other tools that the core is launching, and therefore you as a staker would be able to then share in the growth of the core, because as the underlying treasury grows in value, more Watt tokens are then minted and awarded to the stakers, right? And that treasury backs an intrinsic value for Watt. I'm getting into the weeds, and I apologize, but basically you stake.
Continue. Go ahead in the weeds. Like I'm trying to follow, and
keep going in the weeds. We're good. We're here.
Sure. So let's just talk about the core itself, right? The core is a basic staking platform where you can acquire Watt from the core directly. It has a built-in automated market maker where you would just swap your pulse directly into Watt within the core, right? So you don't go to PulseX, you don't go to Uniswap or SushiSwap or anything like that. You actually come to the core and you do the swap directly there. Now, what this allows the core to do is to own its own liquidity. And I know that was the question you had yesterday about the bridge. Why would the bridge want to own its own liquidity? And the challenge with having liquidity where you have to basically continually bribe people to provide their assets up as liquidity for other people to trade through is you're constantly giving your token away. And what are those people going to do immediately once they claim it? They're going to sell it. That's what yield farmers do, right? They go from yield farm to yield farm to yield farm with their liquidity.
Yield farmers are in the business, because I'm not a yield farmer. So generally,
can you give the context around that? Like, so sure. Right, like what is like not what is yield farming necessarily, but like you were about to get into like how like this is the issue, or this is what we see happening relatively often with yield farming. The idea behind owning the liquidity is to solve that fucking issue. I think is where you were going with that.
Correct. So think about the PulseX, right? Everyone's interested in PulseX. PulseX, if you have the PulseX token, you then are participating in the governance of determining which liquidity pools or trading pairs on PulseX. Maybe it's PulseX, or maybe it's Pulse something, Uniswap, whatever. You decide which of those pairs are earning the PRT rewards as a result of providing that liquidity. So the protocol is giving something away for free to entice people to lock up their money so that others can trade through that liquidity pool. Okay. And that's the only way that we can actually be able to trade and be able to do sizable trades is by locking up more value in that LP, because the more value you have in there, the lower the slippage is on those trades. You can have a larger trade without having massive slippage because there's plenty of money available to get in and out, right?
It's extremely valuable in general, because slippage
exactly
is a big, ginormous issue for guys with bigger money, for sure.
Yes. Yes, I mean, if you wanted to dump, to say $5 million worth of hex today, you'd get wrecked because you would try to do it all in one sale, right? And you see sometimes people do that.
Do you understand that, Sam? Like,
yeah.
Flippage. Just
so I put together like an example from my understanding, but using just small numbers, using like I don't know if you use the AMM like the normal like X times Y equals K type of algebra, but like I put one together just so that I could conceptualize it. Like, hey, what the fuck does this mean? If you're, if this is it and this is it, and then somebody comes in with a $100 order, like how does that change and stuff like that? And I did that this morning, just try to get a better grasp of what is going on. So the idea behind that is that like people see 67%, 670%, and then they start providing liquidity. Other people come in there and it can drive it down, and then they pull their money out and they go on to the next project because it's dropped by 50%. Right? Okay. So go ahead.
Correct. So that's the yield farmers, right? So as soon as you stop giving them free stuff, they take their toys and leave, right? And that's bad for the protocol who wants to be able to trade its token because that liquidity is now gone. So what happens when you take away that need to continually incentivize people? When the protocol owns its own liquidity, it's actually earning the trading fees on swapping in and out of its own token. It's controlling when to add more liquidity based on additional functions of the treasury of the core, right? It's in control. The contract is driving it, not random people who you're trying to bribe to bring in and provide their funds, right? So this is one of the key aspects for our core is to own its own liquidity and to do the same thing with the transformer cross-chain swap, right? So that there will always be the ability to trade. We're not constantly giving away value to people who, we're begging to lock up their funds. Instead, it will always be there, and that value is owned indirectly then by people who stake the Watt token because it is owned by that treasury, right? So it's not like it's in any one person's name. It's owned by the contract, right? The contract is the one that controls it, and that central treasury is the one that's also controlling rewards to Watt stakers and how much they're paid over time, right? So staking of the Watt token automatically will compound. You don't have to claim and restake periodically just to compound your rewards. It will automatically compound internally through a process called rebasing. And what that does is instead of having to generate these constant transactions of claim and restake, it automatically just ups the numbers internally aligned to your stake. It knows, okay, you had 5 units in there today, and now this last rebase paid you half a unit. Okay, now you have 5.5. So next time you go to pay you, we'll pay you on 5.5.
LV, like you're touching on some really good stuff, and I've got questions that I know I'm going to forget if I don't interrupt you. So apologize for interrupting you. Okay, so the structure, because I wasn't clear, it sounds like it's a Olympus DAO is a similar kind of like idea. And I don't know anything about Olympus DAO, but it didn't say specifically. So this is going to be structured as a DAO. Is that accurate?
The core treasury concepts and the ability to have the protocol own its own liquidity and to use a function called bonding, these are all concepts of Olympus, right? And so it is very similar to that. Is a heavily edited version of that code. Is it a DAO where everyone has voting rights? No. So governance may come in the future, but it is not specifically designed like that at this time.
So I'm reading through that, right? And I'm new, and everybody's like, "Oh, you didn't pay attention to security. Oh, there's a lot of rug pulls. Oh, there's all this bullshit out there, right?" And Toshi, you, I know we've been talking to LV for a minute, but like you had alluded it to either before we got on or at the beginning, before we were actually chatting, how you were like, "Hey, I got into BTC," and then I was like, "Oh shit, just made some money," and then you get into other shit, and it just gets wrecked, right? So when I was reading through the paper, I'm like, okay, I think this is kind of structured a little bit like a DAO because they mention a name, but then there's nothing related to governance in here. So how are these decisions? You mentioned governance a second ago, but how are these decisions going to be made to do this? And then on a second point, so if you remember or to get this part, from like a hedge fund standpoint, so my background is like on that side a little bit, right? So from a hedge fund standpoint, if I have like access to certain type of data that other people don't necessarily have access to that, then I could potentially use that in an advantageous way, right? Like, and I have no idea what's going on. This is why I'm asking you these questions, because that's from my point of view.
30 days in crypto. This guy is 30 days in crypto, period. He's never, isn't that insane though? Is that fucking not insane? This guy's insane. You see why he's my co-host? It's like
awesome, yeah.
And I'm not trying to give anybody a hard time. Or try to be like, this is bad.
He doesn't know about hexagons. He doesn't know about RH calls. He doesn't know about maxis. He doesn't know about Bitcoin. As far as the he never got into the community. So he's coming from that perspective where he's like, okay, what the is going on. So that's kind of
fresh perspective, right?
Yeah.
That's
And
cool.
so I just want to learn for myself, like selfishly. Yes, hopefully other people have some similar questions, but like I just don't fucking know. Like, so can you talk to those points, like the governance thing, or like how that is a piece of it, like in either person, and then right. So if I have, and this is just my thinking, I have no idea what the back end looks like or how it's structured, but if I'm like, if I have access to liquidity and I get to see like how things are happening, marginally faster than somebody else, or in a macro sense, I get to see data that other people can't see because I'm just got a different POV from where I'm standing by like being in the background. That allows me to hypothetically take action that allows me to, you know, move in a way that's advantageous for me. Right. I'd love to hear the thoughts on this. I don't know like if people think about those things or not, but it was something that I came up with when I was like reading through that. I read through it twice just to try to get a better understanding of it. Go ahead. Toshi, what's up?
Yeah, well, look, I look at it like this, like when the governance kind of thing where you can vote on certain things to happen. We were just talking about this last night where, for example, I know like Thornodes did this, right? Where the community votes. So there's a TA guy that they take their funds and they invest it. They do some technical analysis and decide where they could potentially be putting the funds, right? So DeFi as a service. And they come up with maybe a list of 5 things. They do some technical analysis. They put them, you know, on their Discord, and then the community comes in and votes on these, you know, A, B, C, D, E, right? And kind of when you have a community that's you know, invested into your platform and is relying on you to make some good decisions for the protocol, but you're giving the community the choice to pick what everybody should be doing, when you have a massive mix of people that don't know how to do, and majority don't know how to do technical analysis. They just don't know how to do it. So
they don't know how to do anything.
But these guys are pushing buttons and voting.
The majority of crypto users know nothing to do with what's going on behind the scenes.
Right. So they're voting, right? So they're voting, and they may pick probably the worst out of that 5.
I totally agree with that.
Right. But here's the other part. The people that are smart are looking at the votes, going, look at this. They're gonna go invest into Matic or whatever, right? So then they have the opportunity to go front run that investment before the protocol goes in and invest in it. Or just somebody that's not even, maybe somebody that's just checking it out goes in there to see what the statistics are. And maybe they're a whale and they're not even invested into this protocol. And they just go, okay, this is what these guys are doing. I'm going right over there to do that and front run them. So it's like,
whatever's public, whales take advantage of. That's just
always
as sticky as
okay.
Whales are sticky like that. They always know public sentiment.
And when you get groupthink and things like that, I completely agree. There's a lot of fucking problems or potential problems and not necessarily best outcomes. So, and there has to be different ways to like structure that. So thank you.
By the way, I just got 4 messages of 4 different people said they sacked.
Since
we started. Hey, whatever happens sounds good to me. Like, that's what it's all about. If people are getting information that they want to hear, hey, go right over to that address. Sandy, if you don't mind dropping that in the bottom one more time, SAC address. I'm certainly going to look into it right after this.
Okay, so question on that, right? So I completely agree with some of those points.
All-time high viewers, by the way. All-time high.
Oh, all-time high viewers. Hey, thank you. Thank you, Toshi, and thank you, LV, because this is all-time 76. Appreciate you guys in the chat.
Congrats.
Awesome. Remember to like and subscribe, guys.
Yes.
And content only here.
And you can, I think it's in this corner. This is the way to point it. If you look at LV's name, the Telegram is right over there. So you can, if you want to get more information and be part of the community and interact, and you're like, hey, Sam's fucking asking these weird questions. Let me just go get some basic questions to ask, or like different questions. Jump into the Telegram, right? I was already in there asking questions yesterday. Very, very helpful. And it's not like Pulse Chain yet where it's going 1,000 miles an hour. So you can actually have some conversations with some people that it's, and you're not, you know, like what you're doing over there. Because the size of that group matters. Like, as Toshi was mentioning, when you like have some things determined by the group, they can make bad decisions. So I agree with that. On the other side of it, it puts more emphasis on like you need to have extra transparency, and it appears like that's exactly what you're doing. Right? Have you guys thought about that? Right? Because you're like, I completely agree. Like, I want to make decisions with my shit. Right? If it's my project, I would like to be able to make the decisions with that. How could you structure it in a way where you can get the best result, right, for the group thing?
Well, that's if you think about our structure, what we're doing here is, so we have the core, and instead of like just running out and only having the option of taking those funds and investing into other projects that are, maybe it's other DeFi, maybe it's their long position somewhere like, Curve or whatever it is. We have a group of projects that are surround the core, that it's all owned by it's all within the ecosystem, that are feeding revenues into the core.
Yeah.
So you haven't really seen this type of setup before, and we're excited. We took all the things that we felt were kind of broken across the different chains of crypto, and we put this thing together to really make sense.
You know how so I followed Tesla for like 10, 12 years or so, and then literally he's like, hey, GOC's like, hey, you should check out X, right? And I was waiting for that moment to tell my girlfriend, like, hey, next time I'm going to be going to crypto next. Hey, as soon as I figure out what to do in crypto, I'm going to stop paying attention to Tesla. So 45 days ago, I was like, okay, not paying attention to Tesla. One of the things that I've noticed with Tesla, and I want to know if you guys are going to do this with community, based upon what LV is putting out and like what you're talking about, Toshi, I would assume this is the case. How Elon Musk completely interacts with the community to try to see, right? Because there's space there between the somebody who's like working on the project and what's going on in the field, right? And the closer those can come together, the easier it is to see reality versus like when there's that space in there. Have you guys, like, how do you plan to breach that? Or like, is it the Telegram and you're like, where are you fucking doing it, dude? You just don't know. Like, I don't know.
Good, LB. Got that one?
Well, I mean, we're very involved in Telegram every day. You saw yourself. We're in Discord every day. We have an active Twitter account, and we're posting on TikTok. I mean, you guys know in marketing as well. You gotta go where people are, and we're definitely trying to be as involved out there and engaging. We've also been doing a lot of AMAs. This past week, we've had some scheduling conflicts, but we'll get back into a schedule of those, doing Twitter Spaces, Telegram, and maybe even try to do some live AMAs in our Discord as well. So just periodic, open times for people to ask any questions they have about the project. We walk through any new information that we can share about, recent developments. We actually have 3 things that are in coding right now. So 3 projects that are in development. It's not just, hey, someday we'll get around to it. So the core is in coding. The Transformer cross-chain swap and Pixel Park NFT marketplace, they're all in development right now. And we're, making design tweaks and getting ready to start testing them within the next several weeks. So things are progressing nicely. We have a lot going on, and thankfully we have a big team to help support that.
What are you personally each like? I don't want like any of the how when you talk to somebody in corporate, they'll just tell you the corporate answer. What are you personally most excited about in terms of like, I think there's like 5 or 6 different things, like Transformer, NFT, NAS, the accelerator thing. That's could be interesting if it could be implemented by other, I think it's a protocol. Like if other people start or other projects start to implement that might be super interesting. The core and the meta thing, and maybe like one other thing that I'm forgetting, another transformer for different chains. What are each one of you individually most excited about?
Toshi, you want to go first?
Sure, I can do that. So for me, I mean, I love the core, but I'm really excited about Pixel Park because the NFT marketplace, we aim at being the largest digital marketplace for crypto collectibles and non-fungible tokens, otherwise known as NFTs, where users are going to be able to buy, sell, trade, create, and discover, exclusive digital marketplace items on Pulse Chain. So it will also be, the first and only NFT marketplace that'll exist across all blockchains that's actually part of an entire ecosystem. So
could you explain that?
Yeah,
what
sure.
does that
So
mean exactly?
most
I don't know.
NFT marketplaces aren't part of an ecosystem, meaning they don't have a core. There's not a bunch of other projects that are surrounding that core and feeding the core. They're just standalone NFT marketplaces they're just an NFT marketplace. So Pixel Park will be part of the PowerCity ecosystem that will feed revenues into the core itself.
So it'll be a branch to and fro the core as well.
So if you're staked in the core, then you could. So if you're staked in the core, one of the projects is Pixel Park, and then we'll feed revenues into the core, which is benefits
Very
the
interesting.
stakers.
Very different than other NFT platforms.
Right. So in Pixel Park, it's going to include the digital artwork collection side of NFTs. In fact, I don't know if you guys have seen any of our commercials, but we have a commercial where we show a lot of live artwork.
I'm not afraid to pull one up either. If you want to pull one up.
I don't
let LV pull it up or something if you want to find it, and he can share it.
We
You
can
can
post some,
finish talking about it.
yeah, we can post some links to it later on, and
Yeah.
and definitely let people check it out later. Yeah.
Cool.
Sure. Sorry.
No, you're
But,
good.
yeah. So in the commercial, you'll see live drawings being drawn. Those are actually created by some artists that we're bringing over to Pixel Park to create their own collections, as well as many other types of use case NFTs like LV had brought up earlier that represent tangible and financial assets. So, but just real quick, as far as the design and user functionality of Pixel Park is concerned, it's very similar to OpenSea. So if you've used OpenSea before, then Pixel Park will feel really comfortable to you, and I think even more comfortable that you're not going to have to pay those unforgiving gas fees of Ethereum, because it's like like you were saying before, it's insane. So fees will be much cheaper. So even though Pixel Park will feel very similar to OpenSea, it's a complete ground up build on a completely different chain, which will be Pulse chain, and it's going to utilize a different token set, such as Pulse, Hex, USDL, Watt. Along with
Interesting.
Yeah.
You're incorporating USDL, which is LL project.
Correct.
That's their stable from there.
Stablecoin, right?
That's where they were getting at in the beginning when it's supporting LL.
Okay, so I'd like to talk more about that, and I think LV had mentioned, which I took note earlier, the tiny home NFT. So let's come back to that in a moment. But LV, what is the most interesting portion of those like 5 or 6 things that you guys are working on that you're like, damn, this shit's gonna be fucking awesome, right?
I'm definitely excited about the core itself, only because it starts as something very, very relatively simple, right? A staking pool with a treasury behind it. But there are additional capabilities that will be designed to layer on top of that over time that I'm very excited about. So while you can stake and automatically compound over time, right, as the treasury grows in value, in the future, we would be adding time-locked stakes and the ability to trade those as NFTs, for example. So if you stake $100 worth of Watt,
GRC likes that.
So you're incorporating a little bit of Hex plus Hedron together, or the idea, right?
Wow, time lock? Are you serious?
So think of it as a secondary bond market of sorts, right? Because you can put $100 of Watt into a stake, time lock it for 6 months, and then sell that NFT, right? And that NFT could perhaps be yield bearing, so that you can claim the rewards, the additional rewards that you're getting based on the time locking. So additional yield, and you can claim that over time, right? Instead of having to wait till the end. So
can you explain that one more time? Because it sounds like it's like how people will do, like, I'm going to say the word like synthetic mortgage-backed securities, right? Like, and some people have like bad connotations associated with the word synthetic mortgage-backed securities, right? But is that kind of like you could put together different tokens in a way to synthetically create a derivative of that to be able to sell as an NFT in a sense?
Not necessarily, but think of it as let's draw a comparison to a traditional bond market just for similar terminology, okay? So you have coupon bonds and zero coupon bonds, right? Hex is like a zero coupon bond where you stake it for a year and you earn some amount of additional hex, but you don't get it until the bond matures, until your stake matures, right? And then you get everything at the end. That's a zero coupon bond. A coupon bond means that you would actually be able to claim some of that additional hex every month, right? And you would receive those ongoing payments throughout the life of it. So you're locking up your principal, kind of giving whoever issued that bond kind of like an interest-only loan in a sense, because they're paying you interest every month, and then you get your principal back at the end, right? It is the kind of concept. Here, it's a little bit different. You're staking your watt, and your watt is earning more watt through those continual rebases. If you were to time lock it, you would get a better rate, so you would earn more every rebase, but you would have to lock that value in for X amount of time, right? That stake would then be locked up, and you would get back an NFT that represents that stake. And now if you wanted to turn around and resell that NFT to somebody else, you could, and now they own that stake.
But that would be also representation of your total stake in watt, correct?
Exactly. So whoever owns that NFT, once that bond is now matured, that time lock is over, can then claim that watt, and because they own the NFT that controls that stake, right? And if you were to structure that stake so that you could claim the rewards periodically, not the principal, but just the rewards, now you have a scenario where, okay, I put in $100 and maybe I'm claiming $5 every month as ongoing rewards for that time locked stake, and then at the end I still get my original watt back, right? So building things like that and building a market where we can trade those things back and forth, and knowing that those time locked stakes are actually backed by a value in the treasury, right? So it's actually backed by Pulse that's locked up in the treasury. I mean, it opens the doors to some amazing things, right? And then you go one step further and you figure, well, how do I leverage these stakes? And go ahead and maybe allow me to borrow against them or other things, right? So I'm getting ahead of myself, because obviously that's not all going to be phase one, but you can see what this foundation is growing into. Yeah, exactly.
And also, just to add on to NFTs, with Pixel Park, we were able to we're the first marketplace that's going to be able to exclusively offer tangible tiny homes in the form of NFTs on Pulse Chain. As we're partnered with the largest tiny home manufacturer in the world. This is going to open up a whole new realm of diversification within the tiny home world in crypto without even having to leave Pulse Chain. And when I had worked with Liquid Loans, the guys in the beginning as part of their core group, my main focus there was helping people in real estate, because there were so many individuals that were like, how do we use this to get into tangible assets, things like, tiny homes or other types of things. So we had talked a lot about that, and that was my main focus. I was with them for a short amount of time and then left to focus on PowerCity. And that's been something we've been working on for several months, is to really be able to bring this opportunity to Pulse Chain where people can actually purchase a tiny home. So for example, you could go over to Liquid Loans, collateralize your Pulse, get a loan in the form of USDL, take that USDL over to Pixel Park and purchase that tiny home without ever having to leave Pulse Chain. Now that NFT represents a real tangible home. Right?
So what Toshi's saying is fucking awesome, but also so the only thing, like, for me, like, mentally is like not having control or any say, like, this, because like you hear about these things, and I haven't been through these things, like for me is like, hey, well, my shit's staked up, and then if somebody goes through a hard time or somebody has something happen to them, then I'm fucked in that process. But what you're talking about is fascinating, right? We just had I'm in Florida. There's a thing in Tampa, Proppy or something like that, and they took a property in Tampa. The title was placed into an LLC. The LLC was turned into an NFT, and then it was sold that way. And what you're talking about, for people in the chat, now a new all-time high, so fucking awesome, is that's great. That is super, that's like very exciting to me. that
Cool.
portion of that, because what Toshi's talking about is the opportunity to, like, you do some, investing, or you do some, placing money in certain spots, and maybe that goes up in value over time. Now you're like, how do I do this without getting rid of this? You can utilize this strategy to actually buy a physical house that you can turn into a rental property that also pays you, or to buy a physical house that you go live in as a vacation house, or you just want a tiny home somewhere. And that is awesome.
Now, obviously we can't, because of security reasons, right? Securities reasons, we can't, tell you what you can do with that home. It's up to you what you decide to do with it, right?
But that's fascinating, because it's almost in a way like leverage, but that's how.
We're very excited. Yeah. It's an incredible opportunity. We've been working on this for several months, and it's been a lot of work, and to be able to really link up with the largest tiny home manufacturer in the world, and the guys that are doing it the best and doing it. They have Porsche in their factory, and they created their assembly line. Porsche came in to help them set up their assembly line to pump these things out at top quality. It's incredible if you ever take a look at their site.
I think that we had talked to take an hour of your time, so thank you for that. But I'm happy to continue asking you guys questions if you want. If you guys are like, hey, we only have an hour, I got shit to do. Where are you?
Up to you guys. We're gonna probably stay on. I'm gonna stay on a little bit longer than anyone else stays on anyway. So just feel free whenever you guys want to wrap up. Please,
because otherwise I'll just keep asking
every day. So don't feel like we're in some. You guys feel comfortable to and fro as you wish, and you're always welcome on the show if you'd like to have a chat about other things as well.
And I would love to.
We dive into some cool ass shit.
Yeah, you guys are awesome, man. I like your guys' vibe. You ask good questions, and thanks for having us on. This is great.
I want to ask one more question. I'd love to talk. Yeah. Whoever's the person who's running the ship on the NFT tiny home things. I love real estate, and if somebody wants to come on and talk to that straight, just NFT, how it's structured, how it all works, and that would be fascinating. I'm trying to reach out to the guys out in Tampa to see if they want to come in. I haven't gotten a response back there. But so whoever is in charge of that, and if they want to share another, experience and be the transparency and continue to build, I'm happy to chat about that.
GRC has a quick question in general. You got something, Toshi?
I was to add one little piece to this, is that we're working with Boxable as a value-added bonus for initial buyers. We're creating a 3D rendered virtual metaverse asset of the actual Boxable tiny home that we're going to gift to.
That's fucking cool, guys.
So Boxable. So for what Toshi's talking about, Boxable is like a company that is coming out with. I don't think they're out yet, right? They've made model homes and they're pre-selling. Is these tiny homes, right? That you can buy and you can set it up in a day or a week.
I want to buy my house tiny home.
I want to do it real bad.
I want my house tiny home. I want that more than anything.
Well, I think they're permanent. They're intended to be not just temporary, but permanent, right?
I think so. I
want to jump into something that I've been researching on my own that you guys alluded to in the beginning. That Sam, I don't know how interested you are, but I want to talk about nodes. Yes. There's some clarification I need, and the community needs, not just me, because I've been asking people, and I'm very aware of what people are. When I ask stupid questions, I pay attention to the answers, and I have a lot of guys that I respect, and there's things that people aren't. So real quick, do you earn money when you run a node?
No.
Exactly across the board. Any chain.
I know. Every chain will compensate miners or validators, but not node operators. Node operators do it out of the goodness of their own heart, or they charge a service to access their nodes, right? So if you look at the largest professional node operator, that's Infura, right, which is owned by Consensus, I believe, they offer node access to developers and decentralized applications to serve up blockchain data for them to be able to build new tools, and so we can use our apps on the blockchain. So every time you go to gohex.com/stake, right, and you want to look at your stakes, every time you load that up or every time you look at your MetaMask wallet, it is hitting a node to read the blockchain to get that information and serve it up for you, right? So that all a node is a server that maintains a complete copy of the blockchain data, right, or a recent copy, so that it can help you provide data on screen and to be able to make calculations and so on, right? It's not writing new data to the blockchain; it's just keeping a current copy. Now, how does this secure the network? It secures the network because the more servers you have out there that have an entire copy of the blockchain, the harder it is to falsify data on the blockchain, because you would have to hack at least half of the servers to show that, hey, this is the proper data versus what someone else is trying to fake, right? So the more servers you have, if you have hundreds of thousands of servers out there with this data, it's practically impossible to hack it, right? So having more nodes is good for security. Having more nodes is great for response times and being able to access good quality data on the blockchain. And that all comes down to, are they well maintained? Are they always up? Are they always available? Are they high speed?
Why does it help? Why does it help with? It's kind of like, so there's a park across the street. I walk around the park with my girlfriend, and if there's trash there, like, pick it up because I want to make the neighborhood better. Is that kind of the idea there? And then,
my biggest goal, one of my biggest goals that I actually have on my goal sheet, and I'm broke, guys. Not broke like crypto broke, but like, I'm working on my fiat situation. I quit my job. I dove into a new project, just doing my thing. You know what I mean? But one of my goals on my goal list is I want to have enough money to run a node for fun. I want to run a hex node. I want to protect the network as best as I possibly can. And if there is something that I can tangibly do to do that, I would love to do that.
So there's two ways to do it. One depends on your knowledge, right? And whether or not you have some hardware, right? And anybody can spool up a node, right? You go into the testnet and the GitLab, they have instructions on how to spin up a node, right? But you need to understand some of the infrastructure and how to configure your PC, software and hardware wise, and all of that, right? Most people don't have time or ability, right? And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. So we want to create a service that will spool these up using AWS or other data centers throughout the world and allow you to say, okay, I want to pay for this server to be set up. I am going to help maintain it by paying a monthly fee to maintain this. It will be 100% uptime, high quality, high speed connection, always maintained as far as the always current with the database, always current with the latest version of Pulse that's running on those nodes, right? And as a result, you then would offer that capacity of that server up on a decentralized market in our energy node system to developers and dApps that need to access that. So normally they would go to, say, Infura today, and they would say, okay, I'm going to pay X amount a month for the volume of server capacity of information that I need to run my application. I'm running so many requests per month, and that's going to be X amount of dollars. All right, well, why charge this big monolithic group here that is now, I think, supposedly owned partially by a major bank, to instead connect the people who want to set up the nodes with the people who want to access the nodes and pair them up in a marketplace so that basically your node can now generate income by having someone else pay you to access it, right?
So that's not, it's almost like brokering the deal for bringing together those two parties, right? Like, hey, we want the data, and hey, I run this node because I want to secure the network and the goodness of my heart, and putting those together. Is that accurate? Kind of
think of it like an eBay for node services, right? So you're selling node services. Someone else wants access to that node to run their application and to go program something, and they are going to pay you for that access, right? The nice thing is, it's an ongoing payment, and you can always grow the number of servers you have over time by taking that income and rolling it into buying more and offering more up for sale. So if we want people to build on Pulse Chain, which we do, right? The more applications, the more good DeFi we have, the more reason people should bring their money in and use, and the more volume we have on chain, the more fee burning we have for Pulse, making it more scarce, right? That's the goal of all this. So if we have better nodes and more nodes, then you can support that development. They have good access to good data, and it can be, in a way that is not centrally controlled, but is more of a decentralized market where anyone can pay to set up a node, and anybody then can pay to access that node.
So thank you for explaining that, LB. I appreciate it. That could be super interesting to bring in a new way for people who want to like help the community, right? Like me picking up trash across the street, where you actually get some type of monetary reward from that. Now, Steaks and Apes in the comments had brought up like the money piece, and there was a question that I wrote down in terms of payout. So how are you guys seeing this? Because right, people want to understand how this is going to work from a financial perspective. I understand there's tight ropes you need to walk. Like I completely get that. Where is the thinking on this? Because in that specific example, you have node operators and you have people who want to use the data, right? And so there's one piece is going, I would assume, back to the node operator, or is it the node operator is getting watt, which is then, you know, like how are you structuring that? And then also how is the payout going to be kind of determined or thought about? Like, you know what I mean? Is it just going to be changed arbitrarily? Is there going to be like, hey, 6 months, this is how we're going to be doing it. It's going to be ratcheting in one direction to the other. Like, what are your thought process? How are you guys thinking about this?
So the challenge with all these other node platforms you see out there, Thor, Strong, and so on, they've all had to change their payout structures over time because they didn't have the connection with the back end sales model that we're building, right? You know, so they're basically giving away free tokens based on how many people come in the door, right? Kind of like a pyramid scheme almost. And I don't want to trash them. They're doing great work for those networks that they support because nodes are important, right? But we definitely want to build a quality service for Pulse Chain that is, you know, not just standing up on how many people we can bring in the door, but more about, you know, pairing the consumers of the data with the people who want to pay to provide the data. And that decentralized marketplace allows us to pair them together. You know, the marketplace will take a percent, right? Just like there's a commission for NFT sales in every NFT marketplace, the same idea. And then there's a maintenance fee to keep the server up and running because it is eventually going to be real hardware in some data center somewhere that has to be maintained and reviewed and monitored by somebody, right? So there's overhead for that.
Sorry, question on that, but then I still want to finish going through there. So on the white paper, I didn't understand that. So it says, you know, if you're operating a node, right, then you maintain the node, but then it says in like the next sentence that, you know, we maintain the nodes or something thereabouts. I can find it. What can you talk about that or explain that? So that,
think of it as a service provider, right? So you're basically like when you go to AWS, right? You don't have Amazon Web Services. You don't have to go and set up a server, connect it to the internet, configure it with a web server so that you can post your web pages on there and host your website, right? They made it super easy where they have just warehouses full of racks and racks and racks of servers, and they just sell you a certain amount of capacity off of that massive block of hardware that they have, right? It's the same idea. So you know, the Energy Nodes as a service will have a service provider side of it that will manage the actual setup of all the hardware, the maintenance required to keep all that running. You can buy into some of that capacity and you would then pay for the ongoing maintenance of that, right? Because there's a cost to keep it live. There's a cost to keep it going. But as a result, you're then earning the income based on how much of that server is actually being sold and consumed by developers and dApps that need to access the blockchain data, right?
So you're going to have natively owned nodes, it sounds like, right? Is that accurate? As well as like owner operated nodes, and you're doing the configuration of those, bringing those together, or
we're still working on that. Yeah, so the nodes project is kind of one of the further out in the future items that we're still designing right now. And whether or not we can support owner operated nodes is a question on how can we measure the quality of one, right? Because if we want to sort of set a certain standard to determine the value of getting data from that node, right? We need a way of being able to then test and measure the quality of one node versus another, right? If everything is in one service and managed by a series of central groups, then perhaps, you know, it's easier to say that this is all the same standard and quality because we can vouch for it ourselves. So, I mean, that's still something to be worked out. But the idea being that regardless of who's running the node, someone has to pay for its upkeep, whether it's you paying for power, maintenance, internet service, and so on, right? Or you pay someone else to do that for you. Either way, you're putting money into it, and then hopefully by selling that capacity, you're getting money out of it, right? So the idea is you have an asset, put it to work for you, and allow other people to benefit from it versus it just gathering dust in the corner somewhere, right?
So that would change, that could change the model like by a pretty big degree, right? Like if I own everything, right, and then people would want to access it, then I'm not going to be kind of like bringing those two people together, right? And I don't like you said it's still in the future, right? Like if you have a node operator and the node person who wants to use the data over here, right? So if I own all this, then it's just like I'm going to be connecting those two together, right? Versus if I have the node operator and the person who wants to use the data and I help facilitate that, right? Those are two different ways of looking at it.
And think of it as subleasing your house, right? You're renting your apartment and you want to sublease to somebody else while you go live in the Cayman Islands for a year. Congratulations, by the way, that's an awesome place, right? So it's the same idea, right? You're paying for the server and then you're reselling that server capacity to somebody else, essentially, right? And the idea is that you would earn more out of the server than what you're putting in. Obviously, that's all depends on the marketplace at the time. And like I said, a lot of these details are being mapped out right now.
When you get to that point, you get to that point, come back on it. We can touch on that in more depth because clearly there's still more ironing to do.
So everyone, the only question that everyone that has, there's only been a couple people in the whole entire chat that have said anything negative, by the way, which is like for any of these chats so far been like fucking top tier because I have to like span, usually people are calling me a narcissist and all the rest, the whole deal. So the admin key thing, that's like the big trigger word, right? The trigger word is admin key, Sam. Do you know why?
To access to the money, right?
Right. So like there's projects, but having admin keys for some projects is extremely necessary. I mean, it's almost.
So can you talk about that?
That's what I want them to dive into, but do it from a broad range so like people can understand the whole dynamic.
So think about it this way. If you were to burn the admin keys for your project has to already have built into it a way to handle every possible scenario that you can imagine or not imagine that can be thrown at it, right? Every black swan event, everything that could cripple your system in some unimaginable way, you need a way to exit out of that without being able to go in and manipulate your system. Now, for some things, that might be very easy, right? I mean, Uniswap is doing one thing very well. They burn their keys, they can't shut it down, right? For other things, it's not so easy. So, because they're designed to evolve over the time. The programming language is not to the point where you can cover every eventuality or an eventuality upfront, or the amount of time and effort it takes to pre-program all of that boxes you into certain corners and design decisions, or just it's too time consuming to get there, right? So there's a lot of reasons why admin keys are still existing, but there's also a lot of ways to protect people along the way, right? There's multi-signature authorizations before anything can be changed in the protocol. There's a cooldown timer before any change is made to the protocol, right? So you need multiple people to authorize it, and you have a waiting period before those changes are applied, et cetera, right? So there are things that we can think of to make it more secure without trying to lock everything up from the beginning, meaning that if we ever want to change anything, we would then have to make a version 2 and somehow migrate everyone over to version 2 without being able to ever turn off version 1, right? So there's pros and cons to that. And, for those projects that can do it, hats off to them. I think it's excellent. For those projects that are quite, where it's just more complex, it's just part of the process of managing, a very complex and broad project. And it's more about, visibility with the transparency with the community, right? What are you doing? How are you managing it? And communicating out to folks as far as what's happening at all times, right? I think there are ways to manage that.
Do you see, like, okay, so right, sacrificers getting points, and then they may get airdropped right, kind of thing or whatever. So do you see there being a yield right away, and how are you going to approach that? Is it so the same type of thing? I like what you were saying about the different things. Like, definitely, I think from like, I just make content for the fucking web, right? Like, so I get to see kind of like what a little bit of the essence of what people like are concerned about through comments and whatnot. So like highlighting those things you just mentioned, I think would be very, very, very important to like perpetually to dive into the nuances of that to provide that transparency and like just understanding for people who like, I don't know what that shit is. And I was like, oh, okay, that's super interesting. But how are you guys feeling or thinking about the structure on the payout side for the staking of the WAD?
So our mantra from the beginning has been the core will focus on a sustainable yet competitive yield, right? So when you stake your Watt token, if you have looked into Olympus DAO and other similar forks of Olympus, you'll see that when they first launched, they had 100,000, 1 million, 1 billion, 1 trillion, or even more % APY, which is insanity, right? You make 0.25% APY from your bank today in a savings account. So with that in mind, we're looking to not inflate incredibly at the beginning. We want to instead grow slowly and organically along with how the treasury grows, right? So a slower, sustainable yield that will, if you look at Hex, the top APY for Hex is 40%, right? And that's if you stake for 15 years or 5.555, right? So, that gives you an idea of what is a sustainable yield over time. Now, I mean, we can do better, we can do worse. I mean, I think some of the unique parts of what we're doing is that the treasury doesn't just grow by selling lot tokens. It grows by the revenues that are earned by all of the dApps that it launches, right? So the fees from the Transformer cross-chain swap, the commissions from the Pixel Park NFT marketplace, fees from the accelerator haunted strategy automation, from the energy nodes, right? You name it. All those things are then driving the growth of the treasury, which then perpetuate the staking rewards for the Watt token holders.
Is there any so the rate from those projects, right? Like the rate at which they're earning this fee and translating it, right? Whatever that fee is earned in Pulse or USDL or something else, right? Going into Watt is going to basically mint new Watt, right? Is that accurate way to say it or think about it?
Yes. So new Watt is minted and awarded to the stakers as the treasury grows in value, right?
Okay.
So a mechanism that tracks, okay, I have X amount of Pulse in here in value, and I have X amount of Watt in existence. Therefore, I can mint an additional amount of Watt based on that value and give that over time to my staking class, right? So that's kind of the internal mechanism.
Is there any how they talk about like the inflation bugs? Not necessarily that there could be a bug, but if I'm like hey, somebody else has control over this. Look at the fucking government, right? They're just gonna be like, hey, over the last 24 months, let's just print copious amounts of money and fuck everybody that's holding dollars, right? So is there anything? Are you capable as a team of just being like, well, let's just put another zero on Watt and fuck everybody? I'm not saying that's the case, but that's what I'm asking. Is there a way for you to do that, or how are you taking care of that?
So basically, the central contract is a piece that can't be mucked around with. It will be audited. We will allow people to play around with it in the public test net before it goes live. So people will be able to see what's going on in there. But there are some key variables that drive the protocol, right? That drive what rate of staking APY do you want to start with, and what kind of discounts do you want to offer when you bond to buy assets that the treasury wants. And those are managed internally for the protocol. You set it, right? You're not in there futzing around with it all the time, but it is something you set initially, and then you roll with it. So that's where we were talking about the multi-sig and the time delay on making changes to anything within the application, being able to broadcast that to people, being very clear, right? And if you look at how a lot of these other Ohm forks have been handling this, they've been very, very upfront about, hey, this is the timing of where we have to adjust staking rewards, right? Because a lot of these guys, they started super high and now they have to taper down to much, much, much lower sustainable staking rewards, right? And they're having to give people like, okay, in the next 3 weeks, we're going to cut down to this and so on. So they're having to, kind of manage those expectations out there.
So the only way then, if I'm understanding correctly, is the only way to mint additional watt would be through the revenue just coming in through these other projects that investing in or creating through, right? Is that accurate? There's no other way other than the revenue coming in. Like you can't just be like, I can do that in my back room kind of thing.
Yeah, the contract that manages the core treasury is the only contract that can mint watt tokens, right? And any new watt tokens has to come from that contract. So while you're staking, right, that contract is telling the staking contract what it can award out, because it is defining what number of watt it's minting based on its internal mechanisms of new revenue coming in. Therefore, I can now go ahead and mint another 100 watt or another 1,000 watts in value, right? So basically, that is the core piece that we can't muck with. That we'll be controlling that function, right? So it's not something we can call from any other portion of the platform. It has to go through that central contract, is my understanding. Now, code is still in development, right? So please don't hold me to that exactly, because the developer is still finishing things. We have to go through internal code review. We have to go through testing and audits, right? So things may change. But it's just the idea is that central treasury is the piece that is locking up those key functions here that you don't want people to be able to call, so that we don't have direct access to it. I can't go and say, go mint me 10,000 or a million watt, right? I would have to put X amount of dollars of value into the treasury to allow the treasury to mint and release that number of tokens, right? So,
what about like, is there any way to game, like, so if I have like 6 different revenue sources, and I'm not saying this is the case, right? Like I'm just from the background, right? So if I have 6 different revenue sources coming into a central area, but I get to manipulate the ratios at which something is going to be going through to mint the reward that I'm going to be giving people of that. Is there, and maybe like, you're like, hey, we haven't got to that point yet. Cool. Like I'm just asking you a question. How do you take care of that? Because that is something that somebody's going to have to be concerned about.
I mean, it's a little bit different than what you described, but I understand your concern. And what you're asking is, can somebody go in and totally adjust things without anybody knowing, right? And that, again, goes back to the various controls that I was describing before, right? Multi-sig access to even be able to make adjustments to the system, and then that time delay before any of those adjustments actually apply, right? And then there'll be other controls as well. So as we are closer to a public test net, we can share more of that information, cool. Right? But the idea is that core central contract is something that you don't mess with, right? But it's designed to allow additional functionality to be layered on top of it, right? So it's built to be extensible, so I can add that time blocking, I can add buyback bonds and options, I can add lending, I can add all these other things in the future, right? But for now, it's just that core treasury that manages the intrinsic value that drives watt and allows the stakers to then earn more watt, right? That's the central component.
Okay, cool. And so I saw, like, as you're going through these things, I'm like, this could be super interesting, because one of like the benefits of, and I know it's not fun, we're not saying that in any stretch of the name. I'm like, okay, if I'm an angel and I do this project, and this project, I'm looking at it from a macro point of view where I can put these pieces together in a synergistic way. I would love to hear your thoughts on that, how you can utilize some of these internal projects in a way where individually, like the idea is to create value in each individual project, right? But how can you bring these together so that 1 + 1 = 4, like 4.5 or 17 or whatever, you know what I mean?
Tush, you want to answer that?
So the synergistic values are, between and that's something that we love and are working on to find these intricacies that tie, that make you want to not just be a part of the core, but a part of the platform that's outside of the core. And if you are, there's a rewards there. So that's what we're tying in all these intricacies to really make it make individuals want to be a part of not just the core, but the piece that's attached to the core, the piece that feeds the core. So that's something that we're working on right now. In fact, we were on calls late last night, going through some of these. Like it's awesome. Like our group, we get in a big giant think tank and we go through, every scenario, every possible, and we hash them out to, and we put them on a chopping block. These are amazing, and then we narrow them down to like the best of the best. And that's what I love about our team is we're constantly thinking of like how can we make this better? How can we make somebody that wants to be a part of the core also a part of the platform that surrounds it? And these are things that we're working through, and we're super excited about it. We're going to be announcing some stuff, but we're working out some really cool things that we know we would love to see cross-chain with certain other protocols that we just
because you see problems that I don't see because I'm brand fucking new. So you understand some of the issues I don't even know about because you've been in.
That's the best part.
Not even issues, just things that we wish. It's almost like this was okay, but if they would have did this, it would have been so much better. And they could have easily done that, or maybe they just didn't think of it, or maybe they didn't have enough things. They didn't quite have things structured the way that we're structuring PowerCity. But we want to take advantage of that and let the users benefit from being part of that ecosystem, because we want to use it the same way we want to use it on another ecosystem. If I was jumping in, I'd want to have these types of things, and same with LV and the rest of our group. These are things that would make us really excited about being part of the entire ecosystem and utilizing the different platforms that surround the core. So without giving too much away and getting too specific, we are working on those details.
Okay, cool. That's cool. We can talk about it. Good.
There's one example we can share that we've mentioned several times before is innovative uses of NFTs for DeFi, right? So you have not only the amazing artwork, you have the boxable tiny home NFTs. Now I mentioned the ability for time locked stakes, watt stakes to be tradable as NFTs. What if the nodes were represented as NFTs as well? So I buy a node and now I can trade that node as an NFT, right? So now you have not only an amazing place to buy artwork and collect artwork and other media, right? Other creative things. Now you can also have a separate marketplace, or part of that marketplace that's dedicated to DeFi. These are yield bearing instruments that you can trade that have functions within this ecosystem that will generate some form of income, based on whoever owns those, and that gives additional value for trading them back and forth to be, and creates that secondary market, right? So it's nice that you could create a node, but if you're locked into that node forever, well, all right, that's a sunk cost, right? But if you can trade that node down the road, if you wanted to move to some other investment, and someone else can pick that up and maintain that going forward and earn that income going forward, then you haven't lost that hardware, you haven't lost that initial cost, right? So there's a lot of benefit to designing things that work together like that, and we see a really broad marketplace for DeFi uses of NFT technology. Hedron's looking at it. I mean, we're looking at it. I'm sure there are others looking at it. And this is the next step in how to leverage non-fungible technology, I think.
Have you guys come up in the brainstorming sessions? Because I think a very interesting idea. I have no idea if it would be popular or people would think it's interesting, but I think it's interesting if somebody could sell off, in the sense of, we were talking about bonds earlier, like grabbing the future value of somebody's individual earnings as a percentage of their total earnings over some period of time and selling that as an NFT as a way to like, right, set up the framework that could be sold around or used around, right? For example, say, okay, for the next 3 years, I want to do this type of project, right? Because what the things that maybe I'm talking about with you guys and you guys are talking about, like 99% of people have no fucking idea what any of this shit is, right? But setting it up in a very simple way where somebody could be like, okay, I'm going to give away 10% of my, fiat earnings or some type of earnings in whatever over the next period of time as an NFT and sell that, right? Because you can basically turn anything into a financial asset with like smart, contract. And like, I think that would be a very, very novel and potentially super interesting way of, you talk about these social credit scores, right? Like what China's doing and like, how the United States wants to implement their own garbage currency, right? Like that is a way to like, control people. Well, this kind of gives the people the control of them. And if people are just bad characters, right, then people can see that right away with what's going on, and their NFT is just going to be trash because they're selling a portion of the future earnings on there. I don't know if you guys have ever thought of that, or you're like, well, that's really not a super fantastic idea or whatever. I don't think anybody would do for it. But what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think about it this way. A bond is just an IOU. It's a loan, right? You're raising funds up in advance to go do something. And typically, like if it's a corporate bond, they're raising funds to go build a new manufacturing plant, right? If it's a treasury, it's running the country. So, they're raising that money to go pay their bills and do what they got to do and you are providing that in exchange for interest, right? Now, you could theoretically make anything into a bond. So if you have something of value to lock up and exchange and to be able to provide value in exchange for what they have of value, right? You just created a bond and it will mature over a certain amount of time. You are either paying out interest as you go or at the end, right? And it's the same idea. So our developer has really had very creative ideas on how to leverage, bonds in many different ways with the core, and to open so many new capabilities for them that we have some very big things planned on, further out that we want to really try. So what we've described here is just scratching the surface of what can be done. So it's really exciting stuff.
Well, I have one more question, and I'll let you guys go because I know we've already taken an hour and a half of your time, and this has been awesome. Like, I appreciate it, like the questions, and like, just I'm not trying to, attack somebody. Sometimes, like when I'm asking questions, people feel that way for some reason, just because I'm trying to learn for myself. So I appreciate the honesty and just openness of all the things you guys have talked about. How does it work at the beginning? And maybe this goes into that territory where you're like, hey, I can't really talk about that shit, Sam. In terms of there's going to be, X amount of this minted at the beginning. How is that going to be split up in terms of like, you can't call it like compensation, right? But like, how is the piece going to be split up? I know you have to probably be super delicate about the way you structure that, but like any insights?
Yeah, so there's only so much we can say, but I will say this. A portion of the core is allocated to the continual growth and expansion of the ecosystem. So that core treasury, right? We mentioned the whole reason for that treasury is to go and build all these other things around it so that it can earn money from those tools, right? So there is going to be a portion of that, maybe 25% or something like that, that is designed to always go towards building out additional system services, keeping the lights on, running everything to generate that yield, right? That is then passed on to stakers. So there's always going to be, investment in itself. The core is always going to be trying to, expand.
Okay. So there's like a certain portion set aside specifically for like how like an actuary might look at how you're going to, continue to be able to pay out future benefits in a pension fund or something along those lines. It sounds like.
Correct. So this goes back to that sustainable yield, right? It's not starting at 100,000% APY or higher. instead starting as something much, much more realistic. And then as more income sources start feeding the core, then maybe that number can go up, right? Because then it's sustainable and you have more coming in than you're actually using. So fine, you can pay out more. But the idea is to be, very responsible in how that is managed and how the core distributes that. So it's not too much too quick, right? We don't want to overinflate. We don't want to create, mega whales at the beginning that then end up selling in the future, right? Which is some of the challenges that we've seen with these other similar projects. And so we want to take it, low and slow, and let it grow and let it really blossom into what it's going to be, right? Because, the goal is for it to be self-sustaining. We want to see an infinite runway, meaning it can pay staking rewards forever, that it's that perpetual motion machine. It's got the ecosystem running. People are using the tools. Those tools are feeding the core. The core is then rewarding lot stakers, and everybody's happy, right?
Yes, sweet. Thank you for diving into that. So I'm sure some people are going to have lots of questions.
Please, guys, just chill it out right now.
Yes, so go right ahead. Yourself, like where people want to go, like
personal, business, whatever.
Toshi, you want to go first, and then we'll go to LV.
Well, I was going to say, Sam, right when you think you're going to be able to wrap your head around this entire thing, and then you're going to go get a VR headset and put it on and experience everything in the metaverse.
I literally, on my list of things to do, like if you guys want, we can do another one. Is literally talking about the metaverse. So, but we would talk about.
We can break it up. There's
going to be every day. I'm doing episodes. I'm diving into these topics as they get more nuanced. We'll just subject them into more groups. Because go ahead and show your stuff.
The NFT tiny home thing with like the metaverse section with the physical, and like there could be potential opportunity for both sides to generate we can talk about it in the future, but go ahead, chill, whatever you want right now.
LV, you want to go, or you want me to
go? You can go first, and then LV will go.
No, go ahead, you go first. I'll go after. It's fine.
No, I was saying, well, fine. Sorry, I was a little distracted.
How can people get, like, people are going to have questions. How can they get a hold of you? Where would you like people to go?
Sure, go to I'll do it. t.me/PowerCityIO. That's our Telegram. That's where we see most people coming in and they're asking questions. They want to check out the white paper, check out our interviews. You'll see our this interview link will probably be in our Combo. You can pull it right up, click on it, check it out if they missed it here. You'll see our information on our website, our Twitter, our Discord as well. We also are streaming on YouTube on PowerCity as well. You can find that link in there. And Twitter at PowerCityIO. And trying to think what else.
You guys have YouTube?
Website PowerCity.io. So it's pretty easy to find. If you just go to our Telegram, you can pretty much find everything there. So again, t.me/PowerCityIO. Come hang out with us. Come join the Telegram. It's growing fast. And we have admins in there. Jenny on the block, Yasmin, LV, so many people in there contributing and helping. And we're going to do live. We're going to be doing some live hangouts too. So we like to hang out with the community, not just answer questions. We want to get feedback from the community. And we just started doing some late night ones, which are really fun because there's daytime individuals that you kind of get a different set of questions. And then there's the late night hangout people, and they tend to come in, and that one's really cool and fun. So we talk about everything in there, and that one can go till whenever. But that one's fun too. You
had mentioned you guys did something last night, right? And so it is immediately when you're saying that, just because of the stuff I do, I'm like, hey, have you thought about recording that and publishing it? Because the transparency value of those conversations, even if there's a disclaimer at the beginning, would be gold. Like.
Yeah, we have some really good ones. LV has had to put a little Post-it note on his computer to remember to record the chats, and now we actually do it more. He's been really good about it, but they're awesome. We have some recorded and some we wish we recorded, but now he's got the little Post-it note up there. He's been recording a lot of.
Yeah, we record the Twitter Spaces. We record the Telegram AMAs, right? So the Ask Me Anything events are all recorded. We try to post them out there in the Telegram. The internal meetings, not so much because we go through all manner of things there, but definitely anything we're doing with the community that is more of a pre-scheduled event and not necessarily just a hangout, we do try to record.
Cool. Awesome. Sweet. Well, thank you guys. Go ahead, VRC.
I think you can find a lot of our videos too. Magic Carpet Ride as well
That's
as the PowerCity YouTube. So Magic Carpet Ride has a lot of stuff.
Okay, cool.
And awesome. That's it.
Thank you so much. Let's do this again in a couple weeks. Let's see how far Pulse Chain's getting. We'll kind of refigure where we're at. Every day, guys, we're all working together, right? They're doing something. We're doing something. We all want to see Pulse Chain absolutely go nuclear.
Yeah.
Nuclear. There's not one person who's not. We are all so excited. And yes, some of these guys' passion comes out in dev work. Some of it comes out in streaming. Some of it comes out in projects. Some of it comes out on the feet. Some people just like to do stuff with their friends. Guys, make a difference in your community wherever you go and make sure you can do these things at the same time. You can make an amazing product and you can have people on your side at the same time, but you have to provide value. And that's what we do on this channel. We're providing as much value as we can. That is my job. Hex in the morning, guys. Thank you so much for coming by. We're peacing out. Guys, that was a short and sweet one, but everyone in the chat, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. Sam Stoltz stuff is right below. Flex it out.
Let's go. Guys, thank you, guys. I appreciate your time and answering all the questions. Like, it was great. I appreciate it. Looking forward to the next time.
It was great talking with you guys. Thanks for having us on.
Thanks a lot.
Guys.